Dikaya Tadadaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yotapatakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishatam Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sridhari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Psalms reading from Jaiva Dharma. Seventh chapter, Nitya Dharma and Material Existence. So in Gudum Dvit, Pradumna Kunj, the Vaishnavas are assembled. One of the followers of Paramahamsa Prem Das Babaji Maharaj Ananta Das is answering the question of Yadav Das, one householder devotee who had come to get some enlightenment. So the talk was about two kinds of devotees, the Grihastas and the renunciants, the householders and the renunciants. Both of them can be devoted, can become pure devotees and become perfect in their life. So, but only very few they actually qualified to truly be renunciants for the whole life. So the process of purification is gradual. And then also about the disciple and the spiritual master, some questions were there, who is qualified to accept disciples, and what are the qualifications of the disciple. So Ananta Das. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu severely punished Haridas Chota Haridas for a completely insignificant fault, just to protect the sanctity of the renounced order. The followers of our Lord should always remember the punishment of Chota Haridas. So different rules and regulations are there for the Vaishnavas. Actually not only Vaishnavas, all those who are on the path of a spiritual life. They may be impersonalists, there may be those worshipping the demigods, So they're all supposed to follow some rules and regulations. So what to speak of the Vaishnavas also. And so Varnashram has to be followed also, the rules and regulations of Varnashram. And so for that, the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis, they're supposed to live alone without associating with the opposite sex. Of course, different kind of association is there. It is physical, or even by talking intimately, or lusting over a member of the opposite sex, or thinking about them. So that is not proper association. So in this regard, Anantaras is explaining about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu severely punishing Chota Haridas. A famous pastime which is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita as Raghav Pandit had invited Mahaprabhu to take lunch at his place. Mahaprabhu agreed. So, but then Raghav Pandit, he didn't have enough rice at home. So he asked Chota Haridas to go and beg some rice from Madhavi, Sikhi Mahiti's sister, so confidential devotees, advanced devotees. So Chota Haridas went there and he was begging some alms for Madhavi. But there was a Vaishnavi, young Vaishnavi serving Madhavi, who was elderly. And so Chota Haridas, he noticed her and saw, and apparently he looked at her in a lustful way, somewhat. And then he came back and gave the rice to Raghav Pandit, and he cooked the rice and then it was offered to Mahaprabhu. She had made some vegetables also, and even some Mahaprasad of Jagannath was brought. And Mahaprabhu was taking prasadam, and he was saying, "Oh, nice rice you got here. Where from you got that?" And then he said, "From Madhavi." And then Mahaprabhu asked, "Who got that rice from there?" And then Raghav Pandit said, "Chota Haridas went there to get the rice from Madhavi." Mahaprabhu said, "I don't want to see him anymore." And so he was surprised, Raghav Pandit. "Oh, why?" And then he was saying, it is abominable for a person in a renounced order of life to have intimate connection with women, or talk intimately with women, look lustfully at women. And then he took prasad and he left. So that was a severe punishment. But it was to protect, as mentioned here, and that was Mahaprabhu's actually idea, that those who renounced all of life, they should be very strict and avoid associating with the members of the opposite sex. So for that, this pastime happened. For this reason, to protect the sannyasis. And it is mentioned then, all the Vaishnavas, they were extremely careful and trying to avoid talking to the members of the opposite sex. Even it is mentioned, even in dreams they were avoiding. Of course, that is understood. Even during the day one is avoiding talking with women, or looking at women in a lustful way, then if he's avoiding during the day, so the nighttime the women will not come in the dream. But otherwise, then the women will be there in the dream. So one has to be careful for those in the renounced order. But even for householders, so they have to be careful also. Who can be intimate with their own wife, but with others, then some restraint has to be there, some control has to be there. Yadav Das. Is it proper to construct a monastery and establish the worship of a deity after one has entered the renounced order? Anantadas, no. The qualified disciple who has entered the renounced order should maintain his existence by begging every day. He should not involve himself in constructing a monastery or in other grand enterprises. He can live anywhere, either in a secluded hut or in the temple of a householder. He should remain aloof from all affairs that require money, and he should constantly chant Sri Harinam without offense. Of course, we have to be practical, but the general advice is there for the sannyasis to simply be engaged in chanting the holy names, studying the scriptures, and then trying to give the knowledge to others. And give the holy names to others. And so, we should not be interested in building an ashram, a monastery, or worshipping, or establishing deity worship. So therefore we see even Mahaprabhu, after entering the sannyas ashram, he was not worshipping any deities, he was not establishing any temple. But he was simply chanting the holy names and giving the holy names to others. And instructing also the common man to hear Krishna Katha, to chant the holy names. At the same time, we have to see time, place, and circumstances. And so sometimes for the purpose of then preaching in large scale, then even sometimes sannyasis. So they may also, to some extent, get involved in building temples, establishing the deities, as did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. And then A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, he went all over the world. At the beginning, for the conditioned soul, there's a need to worship the deities, there's a need to establish temples. But usually Prabhupada in the West, he used old buildings, which then the devotees used to buy, preferably, and then the deities were installed. But so Prabhupada, he was involved in that because there was a need. And there were no qualified persons to do that, so he had to do himself. Even sometimes he was doing a marriage ceremony for his own disciples, because in the beginning there were no priests, and Prabhupada had trained them all how to do everything. So we have to see time, place, and circumstances. But that is ideal that the sannyasi does not get involved in this construction of temple and establishing the deity. Yadav Das, what do you call renunciants who set up a monastery and then live like householders? Ananta Das, they may be called Vatasi, those who eat their own vomit. Vatasi, so that is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one enters the renounced order of life, and then he gives up the renounced order and he gets married again, or he keeps women, then he's a Vantasi, a person who is vomiting and then eating his own vomit. So here, if a renunciant is setting up a monastery and just trying to live happily in a monastery, then so that may not be proper. So of course that is a strong statement also of Anantadas. So although he may not have fallen down, but still, if one is simply happy in living in the temple and worshipping the deities, then that is not ideal for a renunciant. So therefore Yadav Das is asking, then they are no longer to be considered Vaishnavas? Anantadas, what benefit is there in their association then when their behavior is contrary to Shastra and Vaishnava Dharma? They have given up pure bhakti and have adopted a hypocritical lifestyle. What relationship should a Vaishnava have with such people? So spiritual life is sometimes considered to a razor's edge. So in India, they have a simple kind of razor, which is almost a kind of like a knife with a blade, which can be changed. And then they shave. So the barber is there. And one has to be careful. A little inattention and then there will be cut. So that is spiritual life. It is like a razor's edge. So, especially the renounced out of life, one has to be careful. And we should always try to act according to Shastra and Vaishnava Dharma. And of course, to ascertain what is to be accepted and what is to be rejected, one should be under proper guidance of those who are more advanced, those who are highly advanced. Because some injunctions are there in the scriptures and we may not be able to understand always what to do and what not to do. So we should be under proper guidance. Yadav Das, how can one say that they have given up Vaishnavism as long as they don't give up the chanting of Harinam? So that is a good question. If one is chanting Harinam, so then one may be still considered a Vaishnava. Ananta Das, Harinam and Namaparad are two different things. So different stages of chanting the holy names. One is Shuddhanam and one is Aparadhanam. Of course, then Abhasnam is there also, clearing stage. Aparadhanam, chanting with offenses. Then Abhasnam, the clearing stage, where one is not committing offenses, one has some taste for chanting, and one will get some realization. But it may not be Shuddhanam yet, the pure name. Harinam and Namaparad are two different things. Pure Harinam is quite distinct from offensive chanting that only has the external appearance of Harinam. It is an offense to commit sins on the strength of chanting Sri Nam. If one chants Sri Nam at the same time commits sinful activities, thinking that the power of Sri Nam will accept him from sinful actions, is committing Namaparad. And this is not Shuddhan Harinam. And one should flee far away from such offensive chanting. Of course, one has to be practical and one has to see time, place and circumstances. So sometimes in the society of Vaishnavas, sometimes some devotees may be there and they may not be able to understand what is pure bhakti and they may not be able to follow pure bhakti. But then sometimes due to our situation, we may also have to deal with them. So for example, in the temple, and one is doing some seva in the temple, and different, of course, president is there, vice president, some managers are there. So then if one is there engaged in the temple, then one will have to follow the authority. But sometimes the authority may not be completely up to the level, but then it may not be possible to immediately leave that situation. And then one has to tolerate, and one has to and pray to the Lord for protection, pray to the Lord for forgiveness if one is in this association of those who are not highly advanced. Yadavadas, then is the domestic life of such people not to be considered Krishna-centered? Never! Anantadas family said there is no room for hypocrisy in a Krishna-centered domestic life. There can only be complete honesty and simplicity with no trace of offense. So, Nishkapat Bhav, Kapati, Nishkapat. So, duplicitous or hypocritical. So the devotee is very simple, therefore it is mentioned here. So honesty and simplicity, saralata. So one should be subtle, simple, and humble, tolerant, dainatva, vinamrata. So we should try to be humble, tolerant, respectful, simple, and be, yes, without hypocrisy, duplicity, and without offenses, one should chant. Yadavas, is such a person inferior to a grihastha bhakta? So if a so-called sannyasi is interested in all these things, building temple, and then just living comfortably there, so, and not absorbed in chanting Shuddhanam and helping others, then it is a kind of hypocrisy. So is such a person inferior to Grihastha Bhakta? Anatalas, he's not even a devotee, so there's no question of comparing him with any Bhakta. So, if one is a so-called sannyasi, so there are responsibilities there to live a simple life and not to be engaged in taking care of the ashram. So, on the other hand, if one is a householder and he's performing his devotional service nicely, and so then, so he's simple, and then he may be engaged in deity worship, and that's such a person with a proper mood, so then he's even superior to a so-called sannyasi. So he's not even a devotee, so there's no question of comparing him with a bhakta. So grihastha bhaktas are there. And if one is hypocritical, then it's not to be considered even a bhakta, a devotee. Yadavadas, how may he be rectified? Anantadas, he will be counted amongst the bhaktas again when he gives up all these offenses, constantly chants Sri Harinam and shed tears of repentance. So if one has committed some offense in any way, one has to beg forgiveness from the Lord, from Sri Nam, from the Vaishnavas, from the Dharma. So repentance from the heart has to be there, and so much so that tears may come. Yadavdas. Babaji Mahashaya, Grihastha Bhaktas are situated under rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. If a Grihastha is excluded from Varnashram Dharma, is he not bad? Is he not bad from becoming a Vaishnava? Anantadas, Vaishnava Dharma is very liberal. All jivas have the right to Vaishnava Dharma. That is why it is also known as Jaiva Dharma. So Jivka Dharma. Everyone by nature is eternal son of Krishna, so everyone has the right to serve Krishna. Even outcasts can take up Vaishnava Dharma and live as a grihastha, although they are not part of Varnashram. So at that time they were very strict. If one is outcast, he may take up spiritual life. So then, and ultimately he may even be accepted as member of Varnashram. But at that time it was very difficult at Mahaprabhu's time. But they take up Varnashram Dharma, or they may take up Vaishnava Dharma and be seen as Vaishnavas, although then they may not take part in Varnashram. Moreover, people who have accepted sannyas within Varnashram and have then fallen from their position may later adopt pure bhakti by the influence of sadhusanga. Such people can become grihastha bhaktas, although they are also outside the jurisdiction of Varnashram regulations. So that time they were strict. And so if one is deviating, then he may still continue and even get married, but still. And then people will take some distance from such a person. So, moreover, people who have accepted sannyas within Varnashram and have then fallen from their position may later adopt pure bhakti by the influence of sadhusanga. Such people can become grihastha bhaktas, although they are also outside the jurisdiction of Varnashram regulations. So if one has fallen, so then they should actually take a humble position. That is the point here. So if they're deviated and have fallen, then they should be very humble and not be in the forefront. There are others who abandon Varnashram Dharma due to their misdeeds. If they and their children take shelter of sadhu bhakti, of Shura bhakti by the influence of sadhu sangha, they may become grihastha bhaktas, although they are also outside Varnashram. So we see that there are two kinds of grihastha bhaktas, one who is part of Varnashram and one who is excluded from Varnashram. So that was a kind of punishment, and so they were strict at that time. So Yadavdas, which is superior? Which is superior of these two? Anantadas, whoever has the most bhakti is superior. If neither has any bhakti, then the person who is following Varnashram is superior from the vyavaharic or relative point of view, because at least he has some religious principles. Whereas the other is an outcast with no religious principles. However, from the paramarthic or absolute spiritual perspective, both of them are fallen because they have no bhakti. Yadavdas, does a grihastha have the right to wear the garments of a mendicant while he is still a householder? Anantadas, no. If he does, he is guilty on two counts. He cheats himself and he cheats the world. If a grihastha adopts the dress of a mendicant, he simply affronts and ridiculously genuine mendicants who wear the dress of the renounced order. Yadavdas. And Babaji Mahashai, do the Shastras describe any system for accepting the renounced order? Anantadas. It is not clearly described. people of all castes can become Vaishnavas, but according to Shastra, only those who are twice born can accept sannyas. So usually that was the system only. And those who have undergone the benign samskar, so they may not all be brahmanas, but even the grihastha, the kshatriyas and vaishyas, they may also get the upanayan, the brahman thread. So then they are called twice born, Dvija. But they may not be brahmanas. So that there is a difference there between the brahmanas and those who are twice born. They may be also kshatriya and they may be vaishyas. So, but those who are, so in this way purified by having undergone the samskar, Upanayana samskar, then later on they may enter the sannyasa ashram. In Srimad Bhagavatam 7.11.35, Narada describes the separate characteristics of each of the different varnas. And then concludes with this statement. Yasya lalakshanam proktam pumsa vanabhiviyanjakam yad anyatrapi drishet tattanaiva venedishet. One is considered to belong to the Vana whose characteristics he possesses even if he has appeared in a different caste. The practice of offering sannyas to men who, although born of other castes, possess the symptoms of brahmanas is occurring on the basis of this verdict of the Shastras. So if one is Brahmanically inclined, then he may enter the sannyasa ashram, even though they may be from other castes, Vaishya or Kshatriya, usually not from the Shudra, because usually they don't have the Brahminical tendency or the qualification, Brahminical qualification. But still, Kippa Vippa Kirinasi Shurikainaye Krishna Tattva Vita Sai Guru Hai, as Mahaprabhu told. One may be Vipra, Nyasi, Sannyasi, or even he may be Shudra. But if he knows the signs of Krishna, if he's Krishna conscious, he has realized Krishna, then he's Guru. He can help others. If a man born of a different caste truly possesses the symptoms of Brahmana and is given sannyas, then it must be avowed that this system is approved by Shastra. This Vedic of the Shastra suppose the practice of offering sannyas to men who possess Brahminical symptoms even though they are born of other castes. But it only applies to paramarthik affairs and not to vyavaharik affairs. So that means for those who are engaged in devotional service, paramarthik affair. Paramarthik means spiritual affairs. Paramart. And vyavaharik means ordinary affairs of this world. Yadavadas, Brother Chandidas, do you have the answer to your question? Chandidas. To they have been blessed of all the instructions that have flowed from the mouth of the most revered Babaji Mahashai. So these are the points I have been able to assimilate. The Jiva is an eternal servant of Krishna, but he forgets this and takes on a material body. Influenced by the qualities of material nature, he derives happiness and distress from material objects. For the privilege of enjoying the fruits of his material activities, he must wear a garland of birth, old age, and death. The Jiva sometimes takes birth in a high position and sometimes in a low position, and is led into innumerable circumstances by his repeated change of identity. Hunger and thirst spur him to action in a body that may perish at any instant. He is bereft of the necessities of this world and is cast into unlimited varieties of suffering. Many diseases and ailments appear which torment his body. In his home he quarrels with his wife and children, and sometimes he goes to the extent of committing suicide. His greed to accumulate weight drives him to commit many sins. He is punished by the government, insulted by others, and thus he suffers untold bodily afflictions. So that is the situation of a materialistic person. So many difficulties are there. Adhyatmika, the bhautika, the daivic klesh. Difficulties from the own body and mind, difficulties by natural catastrophes like too much rain, flood, or not enough rain, drought, earthquake, and so on. And yes. So ultimately, of course, most important is our consciousness. And if you are humble, tolerant, and respectful, then we can adjust. And we can overcome all the difficulties of this world. So, but then, as even explained here, hunger, thirst, they appear also there. And then, so when we're taking birth, then old age will come, disease will come, and ultimately death. And from one's own mind, which is actually ultimately the only enemy, come Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy. These are the greatest difficulties which are attacking the conditioned soul. So we have to try to overcome that. And then our life will become perfect. He is constantly grieved by separation from family members, loss of wealth, theft by robbers, and countless other causes of suffering. When a person becomes old, his relatives do not take care of him, and this causes him great distress. So many difficulties are there, as mentioned here. So many times also even the own family members are not respecting. So then what to do? So the only way out is to take shelter of Guru, Garanga, and Krishna. His withered body is ravaged by mucus, rheumatism, and a barrage of other pains, and is simply a source of miseries. After that, he enters another womb and suffers intolerable pain. That is the situation in this material world. Yet despite all this, as long as the body remains, his discrimination is overpowered by lust, anger, greed, delusion, pride, and envy. This is samsara, material existence. I now understand the meaning of the word samsara. I repeatedly offer Dandavat Pranam to Babaji Mahashai. The Vaishnavas are gurus for the entire world. Today, by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I have acquired real knowledge of this material world. So that is actually by good fortune that one comes in the association of the Vaishnavas. By good fortune, one can meet a pure Vaishnav. And then by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, one can engage in devotional service, and then one can get the mercy of Mahaprabhu. and then ultimately the mercy of the divine couple. So we are very fortunate to be in this Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. But in the Pavana Hetu Tabhavata Chaitanya has come to deliver the most fallen. So, but of course we have to endeavor. We have to chant the holy names. Nama Yagya Mahayagya Kali Kalmasanasanam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prityate Nama Yagya Samarpanam. So we have to chant the holy names. And sometimes it is a kind of sacrifice. Not easy, but we have to do it. And then, so we have to do it for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu. In happiness and in distress we chant. And then we will get the mercy of the Lord. Padita Pavana Nama Nistarayana Radha Maha Radha Krishna Surupaya Chaitanya Namo Namaha. Radha Krishna Surupaya Chaitanyaya Namo Namaha. So we offer obeisances to Mahaprabhu. And we understand that the Mahamantra is no different from Radha and Krishna. And the Mahamantra is there to deliver the most fallen. So, Atasi Krishna Navadi Nabhaved Kriyamendriya Seva Mukhe Jivarosaya May Vasparatiyadaha. So with the blunt material senses, we cannot see Krishna. But by engaging in devotional service, starting with the tongue, by chanting the holy names and taking Krishna Prasad, then the senses, the consciousness become purified, and then Krishna will manifest. So when the Vaishnavas present had heard Anantadas Babaji Mahashay's profound instruction, they all loudly exclaimed, Sadhu, Sadhu! But this time many Vaishnavas had assembled there and they began to sing a bhajan that Lahiri Mahashay had composed. Okay, so we should take advantage of the process of devotional service, of the chanting of the holy names. We should take advantage of the scriptures given by the acharyas, by Prabhupada, by the previous acharyas, in our line, and especially the Rupa Goswami. And then we should take advantage of, especially for householders, take advantage of the service of the Lord. So that will help us in making advancement in spiritual life. So, sadhu sangha, sadhu shastra hoy. Lava matta sadhu sangha, sadhu siddhi hoy. So this mentioned in the scriptures that sadhu sangha is very important. All the scriptures have explained. All the scriptures have glorified the cessation of the sadhus. Practically, but that is the most important in the beginning of one's spiritual life, sadhu sangha. And then we can advance in our spiritual life by the mercy of the sadhus. So, but then ultimately most important is the chanting of the holy names, the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So chanting japa and then kirtan also. So the Vaishnavas have given many wonderful kirtans, as we will read next time also. There's one devotee, Lahiri Mahashay, he had some inclination, but then he was not yet a pure devotee, but then he had met the pure devotees and he also became pure. And he had composed a very beautiful bhajan. a small bhajan, so that we will sing next time. So, so we will stop here for today because some questions are there. Okay, here one question is there. What if one is very disturbed and tensed about material problems and feels discouraged and not inspired to chant? Swati Yadav. Yes, so that may happen in this world. But we should understand that most important is the chanting of the holy names, and we should never feel discouraged. That is our only hope, are the holy names. Of course, the association of the Vaishnavas is important, especially in the beginning, when one has not yet a taste for chanting the holy names. Then we should take the association of those who are more advanced, those who have a taste, and then they can help us to be inspired. But we have to still have the faith in the holy names, and we have to try to chant the holy names despite all the problems which are there in this material world. So that is happening, that is practically unavoidable, that some problem will be there in this material world. Through other beings, human beings also, or even, of course, then mosquitoes are there, or flies, or rats, and so they may also disturb us. But mostly, actually, difficulty may be there from other human beings because of different nature, because maybe somebody may be envious of us, and then they will try to create some problem, some disturbance, and then some, and especially actually, so for materialistic persons that is understood, and that we may be able to tolerate. These are just materialistic persons, these are demons, we may think. In this way, if they are against the Lord and against the Vaishnavas, then sometimes they are called asuras, demons. But by nature, everyone is actually servant of Krishna. But due to a mode of passion and ignorance, one may be so much covered that he will dislike the devotees. He will hate the Supreme Lord. So then we can understand if they are creating problems for us. But then we can see sometimes even in Vaishnava society, Vaishnavas who are not yet advanced, they may then cause some difficulties for other Vaishnavas because of envy, because of immaturity, and because of hypocrisy also sometimes, duplicitous. So even sometimes in the garb of devotees that we have seen, that we have heard. I don't know. So, but we have to continue, being disturbed, or even sometimes it's too cold, too hot. Or let's say, for example, the devotees in Ukraine, suddenly then the war started, and the Russians, they attacked. And so then disturbance was there. Many, they fled Ukraine, but some they are still there, and they are trying to live with these disturbances. But actually it should be impetus to take shelter of the holy names. And sometimes disease is there, one is sick, and then it may be difficult to chant, but one should try still. If one has a heavy cold, and sometimes one can chant properly, sneezing all the time, but still one should try and understand that the cold will go away, it is temporary. But Krishna Nam should never go away. So determination has to be there, enthusiasm. I have to chant the holy names despite all difficulties. And strong determination, I will never give up this chanting. Like Haridas Thakur. So he appeared in a Muslim family, and therefore the fellow Muslims, they were saying, why are you chanting Harinam? You should chant Allah, Allah. And he said, no, there's no difference between Allah and between Krishna. but I prefer to chant the holy names. Now if you do that, we will cut you in hundreds of pieces. We'll kill you. Said, you may cut my body in 100 pieces, but I will not give up the chanting of the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So one should never feel discouraged. One should not lose the inspiration to chant. But if it is happening, then one should be in the association of those who are inspired, those who are chanting the holy names despite all difficulties. And then we can again also feel the enthusiasm. We can feel the inspiration, and then we may be able to continue. So this strong determination has to be there. In happiness or in distress, in the winter or in the summer, when it is cold or when it is hot, I should chant the holy names. Even though discomfort may be there, even the mind may be disturbed, but we should continue chanting. And these things are coming. Matras pasastu kanti asatushna sukha dukkadaha agama penittastam stitikshasya bharata. Krishna is telling to Arjuna in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So the heat and the cold is there. And then different difficulties are there. But they come and go just like the seasons. The different seasons. So rainy season was there, so much rain. But now then after rainy season, Sharat Ritu is there. It is a kind of pleasant, not too hot and not too cold. And then Hemanta Ritu, it starts getting a little cold, but it's still pleasant. And then Sharada Ritu, Shishi Ritu, then the cold season, freezing. Of course in Mumbai it's not cold and not freezing, it's always pleasant. But in Vrindavan it is freezing cold. But then we have to tolerate. And we know after the cold season, then Vasant Ritu, the spring is there. And then after the spring season, so spring season is very nice, not too hot and not too cold. But then Grishma Ritu, again, some difficulty. It is too hot, especially in Vrindavan, more hot than Mumbai. So these difficulties are there, but we have to tolerate and try to chant as much as possible the holy names, the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam Kolam, Nastiva, Gatya Ranyata. In the age of Kali, there's only one way to get liberation, that is the chanting of the holy names. Maduram Madudebhyopi Mangalebhyopi Mangalam Pavanam Pavanebhyopi Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. So Krishna Nama is very sweet, it's more sweet than anything in this world. Even you can have sweet rice, rasgulla, gulab jamun. Very tasty. But Krishna Nam is even more sweet. So Krishna Nam is not different from Krishna, who is most sweet. Adaram, Madaram, Vadaram, Madaram, Nayanam, Madaram, Hasidam, Madaram, Ritam, Madaram, Gamanam, Madaram, Madhura Depadera, Kilam Maduram. So Krishna, his face is sweet, his lips are sweet, his eyes are sweet, his heart is sweet, his walking is sweet, his talking is sweet, his eating is sweet, his resting is sweet, his flute is sweet, his associates are sweet, everything is sweet about Krishna. So if you have a taste for chanting the holy names, then you can overcome all difficulties. And we will always be inspired, despite all difficulties. So take shelter of the holy names and remain enthusiastic, fixed, and we have to be patient. Even now we still may have difficulties, we may not have a taste, but if we continue, you should be assured, rest assured that the taste will come. And once you have the taste for chanting the holy names, then nothing can stop you. But of course still difficulties will be there. Old age will be there, and old age means difficulty, diseases will be there, and ultimately you have to give up the body. So that is there, unavoidable. But if you take scent of Krishna Nam and develop a taste, then everything is fine. Hare Krishna. So we stop here. Jaiva.